Many of you probably remember that a few years ago, exactly in 2011, as a group of scientists decided that these particles that we talked a few weeks before, the neutrinos, travel faster than light. If something travels faster than light, it means that Einstein's relativity theory is basically wrong, because nothing can travel faster than a photon. So this was big news. It was in every newspaper and everyone was really worried. What happened? I'm Monterey. Welcome to my Cosmic Kingdom. How this group make such a big claim? So what they did basically, they were just here in Gran Sasso in Italy, and in a very complex lab, and they have like a gun, let's call it a gun of neutrinos here in the CERN, close to Geneva in Switzerland and France. So the thing is, like, they were just shooting neutrinos from Geneva and receiving them in Italy. And because neutrinos don't interact practically with nothing, they just follow a straight line. So between Gran Sasso and the CERN, there are roughly 700 kilometers, which is like 40 to 420 miles, and the neutrinos will travel on a straight line unless they are deflected by gravity. So the group was so careful that they measured the different mountains here and the different density on the ground of the Earth, so that they can just account for the difference in gravity through the paths the neutrinos traveled. At each location they have a clock, and they shoot the clocks and the neutrino beam at the same time. By measuring the time that took the neutrinos to arrive in Gran Sasso and knowing the distance between these 2 points, they can calculate the velocity. At that time, in 2011, I was in the University of Southern California, Phaeton, and we were discussing this, and the fact that you have to have two clocks separated 700 kilometers away, and they have to be able to measure like 50 nanoseconds of difference, and you cannot synchronize them. It's very difficult to synchronize, and if you go through the details of the paper, it's really difficult. So I was sitting there in the uni and saying, no, this is not right. I'm sure there is some mistake here. And it was not the physicist inside of me, it was the electrical engineer. Because I've worked in train line systems, and just having two clocks separated roughly the same distance, at least in order of magnitude, but we only need 1 millisecond of magnitude, so we are talking like 1,000,000 times less precise than what these guys needed. And it was just a niner. My engineer inside me said, like, well, that is too difficult, and that is a strong claim. And on top of that, Dr. Clifford Johnson, also a professor at USC, said that if that was true, in 1987, when we received these neutrinos from this supernova, we should have received them before the light. And that was not the case. In the end, the engineer was right. The synchronization has some issues, and therefore they haven't measured it correctly, because it's just having two stopwatch, one in Gran Sasso, the other one in CERN, and you need to make sure that they are both pressed at the exact same moment. There was a problem with that, and eventually Einstein is still correct, at least for now. But the press release, and this is the point I want to make today, the press release of the error was much smaller than the press release of the results. It happened again with this scientific group in Antarctica measuring the cosmic microwave background, and they claimed they have discovered gravitational waves, and in the end they were just measuring galactic dust. And you know what? This is how science evolves and gets better, by people making steps towards the final goal, and sometimes some of those steps are a little bit misguided. But I think it's the press responsibility to make sure that when one of these things that were like on every single page of the news is wrong, they should create at least a tiny bit of news saying, okay, you remember this big thing that happened 2 months ago? Yeah, we are not so sure about that any longer. And that's it for today. Just please follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, and see you next week, guys. Bye bye. It happened again, like it happened again, like a few years ago. Also. It happened